Gurudev. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanam Bhunaktu Sahaviryankaravavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Chaiva Tato Jayamudiraye. Jai Gurudev. Yeah, let's share our inputs. It was a very beautiful, although short, but it was very nice. In fact, the whole flow today, starting with the Vishwarupa Sandarshana and then the Atma Bodh, was very, very beautiful. In fact, I think in Vishwarupa Sandarshana, the, the Sanskrit is quite easy actually, no, for all of us. Most of us may have got the meanings also of when they were chanting the description of how Arjuna was describing, Sanjaya was describing Krishna, Bhagavan in his Vishwarupa. And then the Atma Bodh, these beautiful, in fact, the last verse was so beautiful. Jalam Jale, how water merges with water. I was just thinking of how the river, when it meets the ocean, you cannot differentiate the water of the river from the water of the ocean. It just merges. So similarly, an enlightened being, a Jivan Mukta, conducts himself in such an effortless manner in the world because does not identify himself. He's not bound by the conditionings of the upadis. He's not bound by Stula, Sukshma, Karana, Shariras. So effortlessly he would live. He will live like as if he's walking on clouds, very lightly, very gently without touching. And also that example of where the metaphor where Vyomavat, uh, yeah, in space, how nothing is attached, nothing attaches to space. Space is, in spite of whether happy things happen or unpleasant things happen. In fact, at least for Vayu, there is that little gandha that gets attached to Vayu. But even there, Shankara has mentioned the fragrance it's just picked up by the air. But for space, even that little tainting is not there. Very beautiful verses, very, very contemplative verses. Anyone else wants to share? I think we finished even this one. No? We finished 49 maybe yesterday. We finished Bhavet Brahmara Kitavata, right? So we go to Titva Moharnavam Hatva. Yeah. Although Nana touched upon this, we did this yesterday. So let's go to this. Anyone wants to chant? Bella, you want to chant this verse?
I
Uh,
have a question.
yes.
I'm sorry I missed a lot in the last few weeks,
Mm.
but just this thing came up just now that the space is untouched by anything. So when Gurudev says feeling the presence, so is that the space that you're feeling? Is that the presence is space? Is that what it is? Or what is the presence? That's the question that I have. Maybe it is not connected with anything that we heard today or in the last few days, but when Nanaji said that the space, the air picks up the gandhas, but the space is untouched. So then I thought, what is space? Then I just felt that feeling some presence, is that space?
I don't know whether you were able to attend Gurudev Satsang, I think 2 days back, was it? There was one meditation he got us to do. I think it was Diwali. I can't remember whether it was yesterday or day before yesterday, where he says your whole body is made up of is 99.99% space. He gets us
Yes,
to
it was Diwali satsang.
Diwali Satsang, I think, right? It was yesterday,
Yeah,
day before
day
yesterday
before.
it was.
Yeah.
So in that, um, I mean, that is the hollow emptiness that we are, we are actually hollow and empty. Only this so-called solid stuff is only that 0.001%, 0.001%. So I don't know whether that feeling the presence is same as feeling the space. I don't know. It's very subtle, no? It's something that you can experience. You cannot really maybe go, but then the self is actually beyond the space. If you look at what Vedanta has taught and what we've learned until now, the self or Atma or Brahman is even beyond the space. And that feeling, the presence, I think is I don't know. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know what that feeling, the presence is. But it's a very good question.
I didn't get that. So you're saying the body is made of 99% space, you said?
Yeah,
Oh, I don't know
we
how
are.
that should be.
We are
Uh,
actually 99.99% space. See, if you keep
you water, right? Mostly it's just
correct,
water in the
that is
body.
true.
But
But if you keep going further, deeper and deeper, if you
mm,
look at ourselves at the atomic level, the current understanding is so different. What physics now understands matter is something very different from what we learned in high school, where you have the proton, neutron in the center, electrons moving around. Even if you
mm,
were to consider that model, uh, there is so much space between the the electrons orbiting the neutron, the nucleus. So basically, if you cut it down, if you tease it down to the molecular and atomic level, there is only this. There is one physicist who studied, I think his name is Dr. Dur, I think. He when he met Gurudev, he said, I studied matter for 30-35 years or so, 3 decades, only to know that it does not exist. So the gross, so-called gross things that we feel, even our body that we can feel, we can of course feel it with the mind intellect equipment, we can perceive it. But then at the mm, actual when you use both science as well as spirituality, both of them merge together to this fact that it does not exist. So in that sense, it's all space. It is that is why, see, when you do meditation or after you finish your Sudarshan Kriya, don't you feel very spacey and light? you don't feel heavy at all. The beginning of your yoga, you start, you feel a little heaviness and everything. But at the end
Mhm.
of your yoga session or your sudarshan, any sadhana, your meditation, when you go deep within, you actually feel very light. You don't even feel your body weight sometimes, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
I get that. So basically, we are negating everything, then we become a space.
mm,
So unless you negate everything, I don't
yeah,
think that space exists, right? I mean, that
right,
space exists, but then you have to negate, of course, including the self is a space.
right. And
So,
see, if you look at the evolution also of how from Brahma the Maya comes, and then from Maya the five elements come. The first
mhm,
element to come up is space. So that, so to say, is closest to Atma. In
right.
if you look at the evolution of the
Mhm,
universe, so the space element is by far the closest that we can get to Atma. So I think
mm.
that feeling the presence is maybe feeling the space, I don't know, feeling beyond the space.
Feeling the presence, I feel, is feeling of oneness. Because eventually that's where we are being led to, right? Feeling of oneness with everything. Because this self is the same in everyone. So I don't know. I feel feeling the presence is feeling that oneness. Today you might feel that presence with maybe few or maybe with guru or whoever, but eventually that feeling of oneness with happens with everything around.
Mm.
That connectedness, that's what it is eventually, right?
You feel very uplifted, no? You feel, I don't know. I think all of us must have felt the presence. It's just that we are not able to put it in words. But when you're conducting a session or when you're conducting a meditation, you suddenly feel very, um, very nice, very uplifted, very um, connected. I guess that is, I'm not sure, that is the feeling, the presence. I have said it many times that I felt the presence, but I think, yeah, Vijay, what Vijayji said is also fine. Yeah, you can actually ask this question. Um, I don't know, how do you ask questions to Gurudev? Is there a link, a question link? How do these people who ask questions, if any of you knows the link to post questions, if you can share, that will be great. Yeah. So is anyone here who wants to chant this shloka? Okay. तीर्त्वा मोहार्णवं हत्वा रागद्वेषादिराक्षसान् योगी शान्तिसमायुक्तः आत्मा रामो विराजते. So Tirtva, after crossing, Moharnavam, the ocean of delusion, Hatva, killing, Ragadveshadi Rakshasan, the monsters of likes and dislikes, Yogi, the yogi, Shanti Samayuktaha, united with peace, Atma Ramaha, one who revels within himself, Virajate, shines. After crossing the ocean of delusion and killing the monsters of likes and dislikes, the yogi who is united with peace dwells in the glory of his own realized self as an Atmaram. When the transformation is complete, here, do you want me to go back to the last shloka, which is that Brahmarakitavata? that transformation happens. I think I will just visit that once. I'll just read this so that we get this. Yeah. A liberated one, Jivan Mukta, is one who has realized the infinitude of his existence as the self, even while living in this world. He is one who, through his self realization, has become completely free from ignorance, avidya, even while he lives in his body, which, however, continues to exist as long as it experiences as its experiences of prarabdhas last. He is the enlightened soul who has so well integrated his spiritual personality as to renounce totally the properties of the matter envelopments and the ego, with his well directed, upright, physical, mental, and intellectual activities. He is one of the fortunate few who has died the mystic death, the death of his personal limited individuality. So whatever he does is very dharmic and sattvic. See, he says, no, what is that? With his well-directed, upright, physical, mental, and intellectual activities. Such a Jivan Mukta who has lived the life of a spiritual giant, unshakable in his inward experience, and who has freed himself from all the attractions around him, lives as the self in his own divine self. For him, there is no question of any bondage from the earlier described gross, subtle, and causal bodies. That is the upadhis. He who is the knower of the Brahman becomes the Brahman, which he was asserting all through his years of meditation, just as the worm becomes a wasp. So he was asserting it as a concept, he was asserting it all through his years of meditation, during his sadhana and all that. But then once he transforms, he becomes he realizes the Brahman. The wasp builds a mud nest with no other outlet but a small hole in it and places a worm in it. Now and then, stinging the worm, the wasp sits at the door constantly. The helpless worm, weary with fear and pain, looks on constantly out where the terrible face of the wasp is there, threatening to sting it again. The worm, thus maintained in single pointed contemplation over the form and nature of the wasp, grows itself with wings and totally metamorphoses to become a wasp itself. So here I think it is the single pointed contemplation that is important, that Vyavasayatmika buddhi is very important. Yeah? Similarly, through his negation of matter and his assertions of the spirit, when the yogi for years meditates upon the divine nature of the self, the egocentric limited individuality in him drops off its worm existence and become itself of the nature of the life principle, the self. So here, when the transformation is complete, that is the worm becoming the wasp, and the individualized egocentric jiva has rediscovered its pure nature as the eternal self, it crosses over all delusions which present the non-apprehension of reality, the causal body. The mental impressions gathered in his individualized existence all through his entire past together constitutes the ocean of delusion or ignorance. Through the process of meditation, when the yogi reaches the effulgent experience of the self, he has no doubt crossed all non-apprehensions of truth and therefore also all his misapprehensions about himself. This is possible only when the devilish forces of likes and dislikes are destroyed and eliminated within the individual seeker's bosom. Having crossed over the ocean of delusion and having destroyed all the monsters, Rakshasas, of negative tendencies, showed by the mental equipment in an individualized self, the meditator enters the realm of the self to rediscover for himself the voiceless peace which he has but temporarily lost. Self is of the nature of peace, auspiciousness, beauty. Shantam, Shivam, Sundaram. And this experience of the self, the eternal, is permanent, and he thereafter ever lives in himself an unbroken experience of endless peace and bliss. He is the one who revels in the Atman, Atma Ram. I think this has kind of partly answered your question, Sumaji. Right? So there is this, he enters the realm of the self to rediscover for himself the voiceless peace. That's such a beautiful term, voiceless peace. It is self is of the nature of peace, auspiciousness, and beauty. And this experience of the self, the eternal, is permanent. So this crucial word, Atma Ram, poetic in itself, is highly suggestive to a student of the Indian Upanishads and the Hindu classics. Shankara, a master of the Hindu traditions, brings the entire story of Ramayana to pack up the words of the stanza firmly into its mighty beauty. Valmiki, who wrote Ramayana, not only wanted to give to his readers a complete picture of an ideal man living all possible conditions, but he has also his own lived experience of the self to express. Valmiki was no mere author and publisher. He was essentially a man of realization, a champion of the scriptures. This inner symbolisms and significances of the Ramayana are generally lost sight of by the students, who are charmed away by the minute beauties in the workmanship of his pen. Shankara in this stanza hints at the deep significance of Ramayana taken as a whole. The very name of the hero of this great classic is significant and suggestive. Ram means the one reveller who revels everywhere in all bosoms. I will just read the footnote. Sarve Ramanti iti Rama. So the one who revels, the one reveller who revels everywhere in all bosoms. The self, Ram, wedded to Sita, its own nature of peace, lives on joyously with unperturbed equanimity, both in the kingdom of Ayodhya and in the jungles of his exile. His sorrows start when his consort Peace falls a prey into the hands of Ravana, the 10-headed monster. This represents the lower animal nature in an individual, which has 10 heads even today, the 5 organs of perception and the 5 organs of action. The kingdoms of the secular and of the materialist can never sustain for long within the boundaries of the Aryavarta, the land of the Sanatana Dharma, the garden of spirituality. In an era of Ramarajya, Ravanas cannot be the governors. What is meant here by the kingdoms of the secular and of the materialist? So he's considering both of them together. The kingdoms of the secular and of the materialist can never sustain for long within the boundaries of Aryavarta, the land of the Sanatana Dharma. So in the realm of the self, Ravanas cannot be governors. It is the 10-headed the five organs of action and five organs of perception, they cannot be governors in the garden of spirituality. Rama then, seeking for his consort, has necessarily to cross the ocean, reach Lanka, destroy the demonic forces, and rediscover Sita, his lost peace. Shankara mentions in this stanza that the ocean to be bridged over is the delusory attachments and fascinations, and the forces that array themselves against Ram are the negative tendencies which are natural in a deluded mind. When the inner personality is purified and rehabilitated, peace, the eternal consort of the self, is regained. Thereafter, the man of realization rules over the kingdom of life from his capital called the effortless, Ayodhya. It is only in Sanskrit that a classic can be summarized by the suggestiveness of the words that are at once directly describing the highest spiritual truth. So beautiful. So here we've got several terms: Atma, Ram, Ravana, which is the 10-headed uh, demon, which signifies, which stands, represents for the five organs of action and perception. And then Aryavarta, the land of the Sanatana Dharma. And then Shanti here is Sita, which is peace. So Rama becomes, his sorrows start, like the jiva here, if you consider Rama as not the reveler there, but the human being Rama is likened to our jiva. He starts having his sorrows when he loses his peace to the 10-headed Ravana. So when we get engulfed with the materialistic world, when we get lost in our upadhis and we lose sight of the self within, that is when our sorrows begin. Misery starts. So when you start disidentifying yourself from the upadhis, and you, in the process of negation, and also you cross over the ocean of delusion, the ragas and dveshas, these are the demonic forces, then you ultimately regain your peace. The peace that was always within you is regained. And then the man of realization rules over the kingdom of life from this capital called the effortless Ayodhya. Such a beautiful way in how Shankara is, with so much of finesse, in just one shloka, 2 lines, he's brought in the highest spiritual truth as well as kind of consolidated the whole of Ramayana, so to say, right? Does anyone want to say or share anything? Yeah. So bahya nitya sukha saktim hitvatma sukha nirvritaha घटस्तदीपवत् स्वस्तः स्वान्तरेव prakashate. Bahya, external; anitya, illusory; sukhasaktim, attachment for happiness; hitva, after having; atma sukha nivritaha, satisfied with the bliss coming from within; ghatastha deepavat, like a lamp placed inside a jar; swastaha, comfortably placed; swantaha, within himself; eva, alone; prakashate, shines. The self-abiding Jivan Mukta, relinquishing all his attachments to the illusory external happiness and satisfied with the bliss derived from the Atman, shines inwardly like a lamp placed inside a jar. This is exactly what we do when we do the pratyahara, when we uh, take our senses within. And of course, pratyahara is still one step before, several steps before the self realization. But instead of getting your senses outwardly, you're withdrawing them within, and you're reveling within in the joy from within. Just like how a lamp placed in a jar shines inwardly. The goal of the seekers is no doubt the ending of all sorrows and the achievement of perfect joy. And he is called a man of realization who has withdrawn his consciousness entirely from all his identifications with his body, mind, and intellect. Naturally, therefore, he will not be conscious of the objects of these three layers of matter, namely the world of sense objects, the variety of feelings, and the array of ideas. For to the self, in the self, there is nothing but the self to illumine. I will read this once again. So, the goal of the seekers is no doubt the ending of all sorrows and the achievement of perfect joy. And he is called a man of realization who has withdrawn his consciousness entirely from all his identifications with his body, mind, and intellect. Naturally, therefore, he will not be conscious of the objects of these three layers of matter, namely the world of sense objects, the variety of feelings, and the array of ideas. For to the self, in the self, there is nothing but the self to illumine. But when a self effulgent truth has nothing else other than itself to illumine in its own infinite glory, how will it exist? This will be now the doubt in every student of Vedanta who is approaching the theory of self realization, especially during his early days of study, when he is trying to appreciate philosophy through his own limited intellectual evaluations. The condition of the pure consciousness, when it has no other objects to be conscious of except the self, is beautifully brought out in this analogy of Sri Shankara. When a lighted lamp is put on a table, no doubt, its glowing illumination plays upon the surfaces of the various objects in the room, and in varying degrees of intensity, it illumines the objects. But as soon as that lighted lamp is slowly and carefully lowered into a pot or a jar, the light of the lamp must come to illumine only the inner space of the jar. Similarly, consciousness, while playing through the equipments, no doubt gets reflected upon the objects and provides us with the knowledge of objects. But when we have withdrawn the consciousness from the vehicles into itself, it can illumine only itself. It is said in the stanza that at this stage of meditation, the self shines inwardly alone. This should not be misunderstood to mean only the direct dictionary meaning of the term inward. When the consciousness is withdrawn into the self, it illumines the within, is a statement that is couched in the Vedantic technical language. In Vedanta, subtlety of a thing is measured by its pervasiveness. And in Vedanta, the subtler is conceived as interior to the grosser. Naturally, therefore, the innermost self is the subtlest of the subtle, which means that it is all pervading and nothing pervades it. At the moment of self realization, if the consciousness comes to illumine within, as the stanza says, in its secret import, it suggests that the final experience of the infinite, all pervading self, the subtlest of the subtle, the ever effulgent, the pure awareness.
Please read that last statement again.
At the moment of self-realization, if the consciousness comes to illumine within, as the stanza says, in its secret import, it suggests that the final experience is of the infinite, all-pervading self, the subtlest of the subtle, the ever-effulgent, the pure awareness.
So this
The
is feeling of the presence.
Yeah.
You're seeing yourself as well as in others, right? So that's what the moment of realization.
So it's beautiful the way Swamiji has described and how Shankaracharya has used this beautiful metaphor of deepas ghatadi. What is that? Um, Gatastha deepaha. That is the deepa which is placed in a pot. See, as long as the pot is outside on a table, it illumines everything outside. So to say, the consciousness is going outwardly into the world of objects. But when this thing, the lamp is placed in a pot, it illumines the pot, it illumines itself within. So that, so to say, that within does not just mean a restriction, it means it is the experience is that of the all-pervading truth. Because in Vedanta, something which is subtle, when you say inward, you're going from the gross to the subtle. So the subtlest of the subtle, that is what is the experience. It is so wonderful, these shlokas, and upadhistopi tad by, wait, this one. Upadhistopi tad, I don't know whether it's tad dharmaihi, sorry. Upadhistopi tad dharmaihi alipto vyoma vanmunihi sarvan sarva vinmudhavatishte asakto vayuvacharet. I'll chant this once again. Upadhistopi tad dharmaihi alipto vyoma vanmunihi sarva vinmudhavatishte asakto vayuvacharet. Upadhistopi, though associated with upadhis, that is conditionings, tad dharmaihi, by their attributes, aliptaha, untamed, vyomavat, like the ether, munihi, the contemplative one, sarvavit, one who knows everything, mudhavat, like a fool, tishtet, remains, asaktaha, being unattached, vayuvat, like the wind, charet, moves about. Though he lives in the conditionings, upadhis, he, the contemplative one, remains ever unconcerned with anything, or he may move about like the wind, perfectly unattached. The state of a Jivan Mukta is described further here. The perfect, it's like how Bhagwan is mentioning and describing the Sthita Prajna in chapter 2 of the Bhagavad Gita. The perfect man is one who has renounced all his clinging attachments to the finite sense objects. The mind has a tendency to hold on to something or other. And what is the alternative offered here? It is the constant bliss in him. But what happens when sometimes he appears to be seemingly associated with the world, even though he may be outwardly cognizing and be aware of their existence? He is not bound by them, for he is a free man now, free from these upadhis. As an illumined person, he has learned to live constantly in that knowledge and illumination. In him, limitations have no weight to pull him down. He may move about as a devil, a child, or as a drunken man, but he is not really so. He lives in the greater intoxication of goodhood and in the subtler joy of self-realization. He may serve the society or he may not. All the same, put him in any situation and he will handle it without getting affected in the least by his actions or the results of his contact. He is a Sthita Prajna of the highest order, explained so elaborately in the Gita. The sky appears to be blue and a little grey, but the sky itself is not really so. Similarly, the Jivan Mukta may seem to be associated with the Upadhis and may wander about as an ordinary man in the workaday world. But he gets into that role and comes out of it unattached and untainted like the wind. Yeah, this is very beautiful. Upadhi vilayad Vishnu nirvishesham vishen munihi jale jalam vyomni tejas tejasi vayatha. Upadhi vilayat, on the destruction of the upadhis or conditionings, Vishnu in the all-pervading spirit, nirvishesham, totally, vishet is absorbed, munihi the contemplative one, jale into the water, jalam water, vyat the space, vyomni into the space, tejaha light, tejasi into the light, va and yatha just as. On the destruction of the upadhis, the contemplative one is totally absorbed in Vishnu, the all-pervading spirit, like water into water, space into space, and light into light. Yeah, I was just thinking for an example of this light into light, in an already lit room, when you bring in another light, it just merges inside. They don't have, or if a room has, say, two bulbs, I don't know whether it's an appropriate example, but if it has two bulbs, you put on one, the room is already lit. And when you put the other, when you light up the other other bulb, although it lights up, it merges the light of the first, the second merges with the light of the second, so to say. Same when you have two pots and you break the pot, the space within one merges with the space within the other. So it becomes one. How space merges into space and water into water. The upadhi in me that has occasioned the expression of my personality is my identification with my body, mind, and intellect. No doubt, it may appear that there are other limiting factors, but all of them arise because of one's association with these three evils. The seeker who wants to end the conditioned existence and discover the whole in him should withdraw his mind from the said upadhis. When I no more identify myself with the individuality in me, when the egocentric existence, which is the reality reflected in the mind and intellect, is destroyed, then, like water into water, space into space, and light into light, I come to merge with the Vishnu, the all pervading. Naturally, when my limited existence is made unlimited, I can be nothing else than the all pervading. The stains on the mirror having been washed out, the reflection is now brighter and clearer. When the equipments are destroyed, the Muni, a man of reflection, that is Manana Shilavan, comes to experience the inner bliss without any admixture or qualitative distinction, nirvisheshatvam. When the Vishnu or the all-pervasive nature of one's own self is realized as the self in all, one comes to remain at one-ment with him in eternal joy, losing one's own limited individuality. Yeah. Anyone wants to add, share? So your question, Sumaji, is coming back again and again. So this feeling the presence is losing one's own limited individuality. When you drop your identification with the body, mind, intellect, then you're there. You're one with, like Vijayji so beautifully said, you're one with the universe. You feel that merging, that oneness, and you are in that eternal joy. There is no, it's like the stains. I was wondering why Swamiji used the example of the stains on the mirror. It's very relevant because without any admixture, there are no stains. So you're able to see your reflection so clearly in the mirror. So in that space, you're able to, the self shines forth brightly, the all-pervading self shines forth without any tainting, any nirvisheshatva. Yeah. Does anyone want to share? We will stop here at for Atma Bodh today. I just wanted to add one more thing in the previous shloka. Where was that? Yeah, here the state of Jivan Mukta, this first paragraph. The perfect man is one who has renounced all his clinging attachments to the finite sense objects. The mind has a tendency to hold on to something or other. And what is the alternative offered here? It is the constant bliss in him. If we take our attention back to awareness, back to the introduction of Atma Bodha, Swami Chinmayananda so beautifully has mentioned how the mind always wants to go outwardly. It wants to cling to one or the other objects. That is the nature of the mind. So even if it is not in the material world, it will cling on to some, even on the spiritual path, it will cling on to this this idol or that ritual or that puja or, that pilgrimage, it constantly is out. It is trying to give itself an escape route. But he says, no, those 3-4 words, very powerful words. It is only with, what is that? Unabated honesty, logical conclusions, scientific observations, that you hold back your mind and look within, and you bring it back towards the self. So this is that alternative that is offered here, the constant bliss in us. So if we can yoke our mind from and de-yoke it from the outside external world and yoke it within and revel in that Atma Ram, again, rather than be Indriya Rama, become Atma Rama, then that will take us towards closer to the goal. And we'll slowly, the hold that the upadhis have on us will slowly start loosening up. And you'll come to realize it's all about being aware, no? Being aware that I'm not the body. For instance, if you're going through some physical pain, of course you will take care of it because that is the most practical thing to do. But at the same time, at a deeper level, you can say, oh, this pain is actually happening in the gross body. It is in the sthula sharira. And I'm able to experience the pain in my mind. That is the sukshma sharira. But actually, I'm neither this. I'm neither the sthula nor the sukshma sharira. So that way, I think constant analysis, that is the jnana mathana that we will have to keep doing for us to let go of this conditioning. Otherwise, over the years, over so many lifetimes, this conditioning has been so strong that it's so difficult for us to give up this. So like that Brahmara Kitavat, like that worm, constantly we will have to keep doing this jnana mathana. Then we'll be somewhere close to that transformation. Anyone wants to add or share? Otherwise, we'll go to Bhagavad Gita chapter.
So, there is probably nothing more to add. You pretty much went over it. So the Atma Bodha has 68 slokas, right? So when do you think the chapter 18 will be starting?
I guess maybe like Lana said today, maybe till end of October, we should be able to complete Atma Bodh.
Okay.
He was hinting at doing another round of all the 17 chapters chanting. So probably what I presume is after Atma Bodh is done, because we are on the 55th or 54th verse now. So we have another 15 verses to do. So
Today is 50, right?
I think from tomorrow onwards, the Bhagavad Gita chapters are all short. They're all like 20, 25 shlokas, not more than that. So we should be able to have a lot more time to cover more Atmabodh shlokas. So maybe 5 to 7 shlokas a day. So probably in the next 3-4 days, we should be able to complete Atmabodh. And maybe Nana would devote another 3-4 days just exclusively chanting Bhagavad Gita, and then he would want to start off chapter 18.
Okay.
That is what I presume, but I think that is how it might be.
Yeah, okay. Just want to know. Thank you.
We have, I think, the last few verses of chapter 17 to be done. Madhuri ji, are you here? Are you in the group?
Yes, yes.
So
I'm
are you
hearing.
available to chant chapter 12 tomorrow?
Chapter 12. Okay. I will post it first to you
Huh.
today itself by afternoon and
No problem.
tomorrow.
Yeah.
Sorry, my availability is becoming less and less because Diwali festivities, no, lot of
No issues.
people.
Just make sure that if you're chanting, be logged in by 7:30, because soon after Nana finishes chanting the initial introductory shlokas, we'll get started
Yeah.
with Bhagavad Gita. Yeah? So just
12th
be there.
chapter, no?
12th chapter, yeah.
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow is
Uh,
12.
yeah, Jai Gurudev Brahmaraji.
Yes,
Sorry to
Sheila.
interrupt you. I think for chapter 12, Sunita ji opted. I mean, that is in the list. Huh? I'm not very
No,
sure.
is it Sunita ji or I don't know. Did you put your name, Madhuri, about chapter 12 or 15? I can't remember.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
9th and 12th also I said I will chant it.
But I think Sunita, yeah, correct. Thank you for reminding me, Sheila ji. I think
yeah,
Sunita ji is wanting to chant 12. So probably you can chant 15 then. You could put your name against 15, I think.
Okay, so 15, I don't know, I will be, we are going out of Mumbai from Sunday onwards.
Then you
So
know
if I
what?
get
You just message Sunita, find out whether she can chant 15, then you can swap.
okay, sure, we'll do that.
Yeah. You can put it in the group. She'll respond in the group.
Sure, I will do that.
So we go to we stopped at that's the
yeah. For Jai Gurudev, before
Yes.
you start, I would like to share something about
Yes.
today's chanting. When Nanaji says, when you chant with the meaning, it is different, and it is totally different. It was totally different when I was chanting this Sanjay Uvacha, when he narrates that what Arjuna saw to Dhritarashtra. It was, I mean, I literally choked.
I could feel your choking, Sheila ji. Yeah.
It was so wonderful.
Very
And I still that I'm getting that कहते हैं ना रोमांच खड़े हो जाते हैं.
The thrill, no? The pulakitam, the what Swami Gurudev was talking of.
Yes.
The thrill that we get from within. Very true.
It was wonderful. It was just wonderful.
Mm.
I mean, each and every word Nanaji says, na, if you contemplate on that, it will make a lot of difference in our life.
Yeah.
Though we have heard it many a times, but yes, today, I mean, it is a grace. I don't know what was it, but it just threw. Yeah.
Very beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. It was very evident, not just you, even Bela. It was very evident that you were very, not only engrossed in the chanting, you were yourself getting that beautiful experience. Very nice. So this thing, I'll just read this one. This we read, no? The charity which is given without respect, improperly and contemptuously at the wrong place and wrong time, and to unworthy recipients is called tamasika. That we've seen. So this chapter began with Arjuna asking a question about a person who performs rituals without following the Shastra Vidhi. He started off asking Ashastra Vidhi Mutsrijya. That was the starting. But with Shraddha, how do we view those karmas in terms of gunas? Are they sattvika, rajasika, or tamasika? Now Krishna answers that question. He says that if a person has Shraddha and performs the karma saying Om Tat Sat at the beginning and at the end, that is enough to make the karma sattvika, even if he does not follow the Shastra Vidhi completely. If there is an omission, either due to ignorance or haste or some distraction or unavailability of certain materials, that can be made up by simply saying Om Tat Sat. These words said at the beginning and at the end make the karma complete. How do we know this? It is purely from Shastra. Saying Om Tat Sat makes the karma efficacious. Even in a puja, one offers akshata as a substitute for clothes, ornaments, and so on. This will never work in human transaction. But in a ritual, we have options. And one of them is saying Om Tat Sat to make up for any omissions or commissions. The complete sentence, though just indicated in the verse, is Om Tat Sat Ishwararpanamastu. Let this be an offering unto the Lord who is Om Tat Sat. At the beginning of any ritual and then again at the end, it is a common practice to say Om Tat Sat. In this way, when the karma is dedicated unto Ishvara, it makes the karma sattvika and therefore more efficacious. Basically, us saying Om Tat Sat is bringing in the essence of karma yoga. So at the beginning and at the end, you say Om Tat Sat. So at the beginning, you say it because you're offering all your karma unto the Lord. And in the end, you say Om Tat Sat. You take whatever he's giving to you as prasada. But then it is only in case, here he says, if there is an omission either due to ignorance, haste, or some distraction. This is with respect to doing any karma or ritual or unavailability of certain materials. Then by simply saying Om Tat Sat in the beginning and the end, provided you have the Shraddha, then that karma becomes sattvika. Although it is a Shastra Vidhi, because of all these omissions and distractions and non-availability of material. Om Tat Saditi Nirdesho Brahmanastrividha Smritaha Brahmanastena Vedascha Yajnascha Vihita Pura. Om Tat Sat Iti. Saying Om Tat Sat, Brahmanaha, of Brahman, Trividaha Nirdeshaha, the threefold mention, Smritaha, is thought about, Tena, by that, Brahmanaha, the Brahmanas, Vedaha cha, and the Vedas, Yajnaha cha, and rituals, Pura, in the beginning, Vihitaha, were created. Om Tat Sat is the threefold expression of Brahman. By that, the Brahmanas, the four Vedas, and rituals were created in the beginning. A meaningful word, anything that reveals something, is called Nirdesha. It is an expression that reveals something. In that sense, a name is also called a Nirdesha because it stands for the object and reveals that object. The three-word expression Trivida Nirdeshaha, Om Tat Sat, is mentioned Smritaha in the Vedanta Shastra and by those who know the Vedanta Shastra. Like any Nirdesha, these words reveal an object, the Nirdeshya. What is that? The three words Om Tat Sat reveal Brahman. The word Tat indicates Brahman, as it does in the sentence Tattvamasi. Om also is Brahman, as stated in the Upanishad Vakya, Om iti Brahma, and Om iti etad aksharam idam sarvam. I will read the footnotes when we come to that end of the page. Then the word Sat is used for Brahman as the cause of creation. Sat eva somya idam agre asit ekameva advitiyam. All three words independently and together reveal Brahman. In this expression, Brahmanaha Vedaha Yajnaha cha Vihitah Pura. Brahmanas, Vedas, and Yajnas were created. The word Brahmana can be taken as denoting the Varna, that is, Brahmana, and thus standing for all four categories of people mentioned in the Veda. Or it can be adjective to the word Veda, meaning the Vedas that are called Brahmanas. This includes all four Vedas. They all begin with Om. Yajnas are the rituals mentioned in the Veda, like Agnihotra, as well as any form of worship to the Lord, like puja. All these Brahmanas, Vedas, and Yajnas were created by saying Om Tat Sat. Because by saying this, Brahmaji created everything. These words came out from Brahmaji in the beginning, Pura. Then everything was created. And therefore, they have become very important words. Just by saying them, you create a certain force that neutralizes any wrong action committed and makes up for any omission of a prescribed step. One must also have Shraddha in the efficacy of saying Om Tat Sat. If you simply say it without Shraddha, it is meaningless. So the first one, Tattvamasi, is Chandogya Upanishad. The second one, Om Iti Brahma, I think is Taittiriya Upanishad. And third Mando. Let me just go back. So Tattvamasi is from the Chandogya Upanishad. Om Iti Brahma is the Taittiriya Upanishad. Yeah, and then we have Om Iti Etad Aksharam Idam Sarvam. That is from the Mandukya Upanishad. And then Sadeva Soumya Idam Agre Asit Ekameva Advitiyam. The fourth one is the Chandogya Upanishad again. Now he is going to deal with each of these words severally. First, he takes up the word Om. So it is not, it is, of course, it is a panacea, Om Tat Sat, because individually and collectively they remain, they reveal Brahman. Om, Tat, and Sat. If you go back to the evolution of the universe, it was first Brahma, then Brahmashraya, Maya, then Mahapanchabhutas, Panchamahabhutas came out. From the space element, if you recollect, from the space element, Akasha, it is the sound element comes from the Akasha. So Om is actually the closest to Brahman, because that is the first, the universal sound. It is also, it represents Brahma. And I think NASA scientists also have, they have recorded the sound of the universe, the sound of the cosmos, even sound of the sun, and it is actually very similar to Om. The vibrations, the vibrations that come out from the cosmos is actually very similar to Om. So that way, Om is it represents Brahma. Similarly, Tat. Tat is like the Tattvamasi in the Mahavakya. That is also Brahman. And Sat. Sat is Trikala Abhatitaha, what stays in all the three states of consciousness. what exists. But then here it says, is mentioned smritaha, no? Smritaha, isn't smriti Puranas? Isn't Shruti Vedanta? I don't know. I thought smriti was Puranas and the epics and all that. And Shruti was the Vedas and the Upanishads. I don't know. This one we will have to ask. Anyone can throw light? Not we will. And this beautiful thing of nirdesha. A meaningful word is anything that reveals something is called nirdesha. Does anyone want to add anything?
Jai Gurudev. I
Yes.
think Shruti is the revelations of the wisdom of absolute, and Smriti is the code of behavior for mankind in the world. And Puranas are the ancient records. That's what they have mentioned it in the Guru Puja manual.
What I know is Shruti is something that is heard, that is from the Akashic records. When sages and these enlightened people have meditated, they were able to download this. So all that, the compilation of all of that is the Shruti. And all the Vedas come into that. Whereas Smriti is something that has been, that is kind of written. That is my understanding, but maybe we'll have to check out. I'm not sure whether Upanishads come under Smriti, because it is from the student and the taught, the teacher and the taught, teacher and the student. It's usually all the Upanishads are a dialogue between the teacher and the taught. No? So I think I have to brush that up. What exactly comes under Smriti? Because Bhagavad Gita is actually part of Mahabharata, which is a Smriti. Although it is a Smriti, it is considered a Shastra, Brahma Vidya, because it is also the Nididhyasana Shastra. Shall I continue? Anyone wants to add anything? Tasmadomityudarhritya yajnadana kriyaha pravartante vidhanoktaha satatam brahmavadinam. Tasmat, therefore, brahmavadinam, for those who know the Veda, vidhana uktaha, mentioned by injunctions of the Veda, yajna dana tapah kriyaha, the activities such as rituals, charities, religious disciplines, satatam, always, om iti udahritya, by pronouncing om, pravartante, begin. Therefore, for those who know the Vedas, the activities such as rituals, charities, and religious disciplines mentioned by injunctions of the Veda always begin by pronouncing Om. At the beginning of a ritual, Om is recited by the priests, Ritviks, and only then is the ritual begun. Then, and throughout the performance of the ritual, Omkara is repeatedly pronounced. Various forms of charity, dana, are also undertaken, first saying Om to ensure their efficacy. We have seen that there are 3 types of dana, but what is meant here is only Sattvika dana. Merely reciting Om will not improve the quality of Rajasika or Tamasika dana. The 3 types of tapas, Kayika, Vachika, and Manasa, can also be made proper by first reciting Om. That makes all these things as effective as if they were done exactly as mentioned in the mandates of Shastra, Vidhana Ukta. For whom does the taking begun by saying Om have this effect? For those who have the qualifications to know and recite the Vedas, the Brahmavadis. For those who know the Veda, all the Yajna Dana Tapah Kriyas begun by reciting Om become as good as if they were done according to the stipulations of Shastra. So they have begun by chanting Om, then it's as good as they're doing according to Shastra. When do they begin in this way? Not occasionally, but always, Satatam. It is not that certain karmas begin like this and others do not. Any mantra or archana always begins with Om. Similarly, any yajna, dana or tapas always begins with Om. Why? Om purifies everything. It is such a sacred sound that by simply pronouncing it, even the speech, vak, is purified, and the action, kriya, you do becomes complete. It is the same with reference to the word tat. So beautiful, Om. I would always wonder, why do we say Om, and why Gurudev gives so much of importance to Om. In fact, he was he was not so happy when in the United Nations, they did not include Om in the International Yoga Day when they had proclaimed June 21st. Everything else was accepted, but they did not take in Om, I think. I think it was not mentioned there. And Gurudev had mentioned that time that, it is Om has to be included because it is a universal sound. Not only now that it is closest to Brahman, that is one. The importance of how we start our sadhana also by chanting Om. I'm not sure if all of us do that at home, but in the ashram or in courses where we go, especially for advanced courses and all, when we begin, just before we begin sadhana, we start with Om, chant Om 3 times, right? So all that makes so much of sense now. But then this Om, it is clarified again that it's only meant for Satvika Dana. You cannot do Tamasika and Rajasika Dana, say Om, and then it becomes Satvika. No, it is only for Satvika Dana. At the beginning of a ritual, you start with Om. And you say it with Shraddha. Even that Om Tat Sat, it's not like you just say Om Tat Sat and whatever you do becomes Satvika. No, it is to be said with that Shraddha, in the complete faith in that, in those words. I think we have 2 more verses, I think, no? 25 and 26. 27 also. I'm just checking. Oh, we're 28. Because I thought we have another 4 verses. I thought we will do a little bit of meditation before 5 minutes of meditation before we do. I think this Tat will go tomorrow. We'll stop with it today. So the application of Om and the word Tat is this one. It is the same with reference to the word Tat. So this will take up tomorrow. This is shloka number 25. Anyone wants to share or add or say anything? Please go ahead. If not, we will just spend a few minutes with our eyes closed. We meditate and then we'll chant the Shanti Path. Jai Gurudev. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Tat Sat Shri Krishna Arpanamastu. Jai Gurudev.
Thank you.